Hey guys, how's it going? I hope you're having a great one. Today I want to talk a little bit about the newest vein of attack on Bernie Sanders. It's really risen in the last couple weeks, which revolves around the fact that Bernie is a quote-unquote millionaire, and as such, every criticism he has of the millionaire and billionaire class, of the wealthy, of the 1%, whatever you want to call them, is therefore hypocritical and could sort of be hand-waved away. There was that Politico piece where they criticized Bernie Sanders for owning multiple homes and having, a high net worth. And there was a recent piece just a couple days ago by Kristin Tate in The Hill, which made the argument that Bernie Sanders has basically stolen public money for generations, and that's why he's a wealthy man. But really, when you read the piece, what she's arguing, and what this whole thing revolves around, is that Bernie Sanders has the gall to actually get paid a salary. And that's why he's this bigwig millionaire, this leech on the public dollar, and that he's a hypocrite for criticizing the 1% he's a part of. The reality is, Bernie Sanders has earned most of his wealth the way most working class Americans have, which is through his labor. Mostly as a mayor / congressperson / senator. That's how he's earned his money. He hasn't earned it on Wall Street. He hasn't earned it by exploiting the surplus labor of workers as a capitalist. He is, among long-running politicians at least, relatively modest in terms of his wealth. I mean, these pieces, they talk about his $500,000 or so house in Washington. I don't know about real estate prices in Washington. I'm a Canadian, but I darn well know that $500,000 in a big city in Canada really isn't all that expensive. And if you start calling everyone who owns a $500,000 house in Canada a rich person, you're going to be laughed out of many a room. Because the reality is that in Toronto and in Vancouver, $500,000 probably won't get you a house in much of the city. You'll only certainly be able to get a condo. All of this goes to show just how utterly desperate all of these attacks are on Bernie. Because they have nothing. They got nothing on him. They've tried to go with the whole, his ideas are impractical or unpopular. But his ideas are popular universally, and they've been only getting more popular as the realities of modern capitalism set in with people. Americans have always supported good healthcare and good pensions and good workplace benefits, but since the crash in 2008, more and more people realize that those things won't be offered by the quote-unquote free market, and that there needs to be greater government involvement to provide education and healthcare and decency in the workplace, and that employers will not do so through their benevolence. So in addition to social programs, you're going to see a need for greater unionization, greater worker ownership. All these sorts of things are what Bernie has been talking about, not just since 2016 where he rose to national and international fame, but since the 1970s and 80s and 90s, when Bernie Sanders was relatively unknown, and when Bernie Sanders was seen as this voice in the wilderness, crying out for social justice when everyone was hankering for the end of history that supposedly followed the collapse of communism. Look, the reality is that Bernie Sanders is here to stay in this race. He may not ultimately win. Who knows? I think he's got a great shot. But you're not going to get a knockout blow on the fact that Bernie Sanders earned a decent salary, as Congress people do, and he earned it for a long time, and therefore technically he's earned a lot of money. Look, this kind of goes to what Russell Brand has often said. Russell Brand is, famous comedian. He basically said that, when I was poor, people didn't want me talking about inequality because they felt that it made me look jealous. It made me look envious of the truly successful and industrious. And now that I have money and I have success, people don't like me talking about inequality because they say I'm a hypocrite and that, I've earned all this wealth and yet I don't want others to do the same thing. But what Russell Brand really came to is a realization that those people who don't want the rich to talk about inequality or the poor to talk about inequality just don't want any of us to talk about inequality. So for Bernie Sanders, they go after him in this dual vein. Bernie is the lazy person who never worked a real job in his life and never earned a salary until he was already in his late 30s, early 40s, and therefore has no idea about the real world. Yet simultaneously, he's this successful millionaire who's being a hypocrite because he won't allow people to have the same American dream he did. And it's just totally nonsensical. Now, I personally think that even the amount of wealth Bernie Sanders has may be excessive. But the fact is is that if there's any politician willing to challenge his own wealth and power and privilege, it is Bernie Sanders. If there's a politician in the United States that you can look to and say, this is a guy who has money and yet will work against his own personal interests for the benefit of regular working class Americans, it's Bernie Sanders. 100%. So they can keep attacking Bernie for his houses. They can keep attacking Bernie because he had the temerity, the gall to accept a paycheck to be a congressperson and a senator and a mayor. They can do that all day and night because what it shows is that the rich, the elite, and all those sycophantic media people who aren't rich and aren't elite, but really, really want to be and hope that if they lick those boots just good enough, that they'll one day get there. They just don't want us to talk about inequality. They don't want us to talk about the fact that economic recoveries tend to benefit the wealthy. They don't want to talk about the fact that in a time of unimaginable wealth, both in the United States but also globally, there continues to be deep poverty and inequality. They don't want to talk about the fact that millions of people are still deeply affected by lack of access to decent education and healthcare and childcare and all the things people need. They don't want us to talk about those things. And they especially don't want us to talk about the fact that the way we get those things is by taxing the rich. Their income, their wealth, their capital gains, their stock trades, any one of those means, a combination of them all. They don't want us to talk about that. So Bernie, he's simultaneously the hippie loser who never achieved anything, and he's the millionaire who doesn't want people to have that success. It's nonsensical, and people are probably going to see through it, and I'm really glad to see that if this is all they have on Bernie Sanders, we might be looking at the next president of the United States. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, I would really encourage you to like, comment, and subscribe. It helps to spread the message to let people know that Bernie Sanders is being attacked for doing what any other person would do, collecting the paycheck they earned. Likewise, I have a Patreon. I'll post a link in the description. If you support me there, it'll help to improve the quantity and quality of these videos, which will of course be very helpful to me. So I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching.